right, guys, welcome back to another edition of a production by Ink Squared. Again, this is a monthly October session, and again, October is Cybersecurity Month, and is remember everybody's responsibility. So I want to thank you guys for um, watching my last videos. If you didn't, please take a look at them. Take a look at them. Watch them. They're great videos, very informative stuff. Please, if you're interested uh, in in expanding your horizons and learning courses and whatnot, you can join my WhatsApp channel. You can join my WhatsApp channel uh, and add us into that. It's a brand new group. It again just started last month. And I'm slowly growing it. So again, if you're joined, thanks again. If you haven't joined, please like, subscribe, and you know, let's keep it going. Um, in this one here, I want to talk about VDIs, and it's sort of like I have a three part. I want to talk about, what a persistent. My first one, I want to talk about what is persistent, and you hear that a lot. Persistent, the word persistent, um, versus non-persistent, right? Persistent VDI, right? Um, you know, and again, we tend to want to know. And again, I'm Sal Cosentino. I'm your systems architect and professional, right? Um, and future MCT trainer, Sal Cosentino. So again, right? So again, it's what is it? 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 Right? Because I hear that a lot, and I get confused about what is it. Like, what's a VDI? Like, what is a VDI? And these things do come up in scenarios where we don't know what that is and what that means, right? So we have to understand, um, you know, uh, you have to understand what that is, right? And how that works in any environment, right? So when we talk about persistency, right, we talk about, if users have persistent VDI sessions, the user-based installation can work effectively. Since I'm going to use this as an example in all my examples, right? My example application today is Teams, Microsoft Teams, right? Microsoft, and today's session is going to be sponsored by that Microsoft Teams, right? So you know, there's that new MSXI version, that version 2 application that just came out for users. And again, since that application will remain installed for a specific user across a session, so if users have that session, that user-based installation can work effectively, right? Since the example Microsoft Team application will remain installed for that specific user request session. So we have to understand that, and when we talk about non-persistent VDIs, right? What is it like? What are we using it for? So in a non-persistent VDI, and I'll slowly get to the point here, but I need you guys to kind of understand examples first to kind of see where this all works and how this intertwines, right? So my first session today that I'm going to be talking about is persistent versus non-persistent VDI. And I also want to talk about multi-session. We'll make this a three-part series. I'll talk about single session versus multi-session VDI, right? So you guys know what that means. And then I'll also talk about privileged access workstation, and what that is and how that's used, and how that should be used in all environments, right? Just because we haven't, um, you know, right, right? So we'll talk about that in our third part. But again, I want to talk about, and we'll talk about this in our second part, but I want to break this down into three parts so you guys have it and you're not mixed up here. We'll stick to a part of per session. So in this video here today, we'll be talking about the persistent versus the non-persistent VDI. And again, we want to know what VDI means. We want to know what persistent means. We want to know non-persistent. It's something that works effectively in any scenario, right? So across any session, while our non-persistent VDIs, in that non-persistent VDI environment, the VDI sessions are reset after the user logs off, right? So if we talk about wordplay, um, reset after the user logs off, right? You would need to ensure that Teams, our application again, our example application, our Microsoft Teams MSXi package, like I stated, installs on login each time. So we need to ensure that that constantly works. Another example would be Chrome, right? So by achieving this setup, a script or a policy that installs Microsoft Teams when the user profile is loaded. So this is an example of something that you can do when you have those persistent, when you're differentiating between persistence and non-persistence, right? We also talk about what VDI is. You'll hear this word a lot, VDI, that short acronym, and that stands for virtual desktop infrastructure. Okay, so we have a persistent virtual desktop infrastructure, and we have our non-persistent VDI. Again, VDI, it is a virtual desktop environment and virtual desktop infrastructure. My apologies. And if I take this to the drawing board here, um, right, or I can use my IO. My flowchart maker here, draw that IO. Don't want to open, I just want to create something. Actually, you know what, let's just open the old. So if I were to open up a document here, right? And again, if we're, oh, size, you know what, let's go back here. So I'm going to resize. So I want to resize it. So to take the grid out, change the background color. There you go. So, all right, and I want to grab my pen. See if I can grab my pen here to insert. I want my pen. It's a little bit skinnier. So the stroke's a little bit skinnier. So when we talk about virtual desktop infrastructure, we talk about operating systems, applications, user settings, and data. Um, so think of it, and we also start talking about session virtualization too. So where keystrokes are sent from the client and screens are sent from the server, right? So when we look at a desktop infrastructure, right, we look at an approach where we have our server, our operating systems, we have our user settings and data, and we have our VMs in our database here, and then that machine server is connected to the cloud where we can access our desktops, right, our VMs, right, whatever VM it can be. So VM1 is a laptop, 2 is a desktop, 3 is our device. So we have to understand, um, it's the IT infrastructure that lets us access those devices and systems from any device. So we should be able to access this device, right, from anywhere, right? We should be able to access this from anywhere, right? So similar to that. Our devices, again, such as a personal computer, a smartphone, a tablet, or a laptop, And this also eliminates the need for your company to provide you with and manage repairs. So you don't have to replace a physical machine, right? So we're removing the physicality of it and creating it virtually, right? And a lot of you might have seen it done through Horizon, Citrix, Hyper-V. You know, you guys using these as I'll show you in Workstation Pro how to create them as well too. So we can authorize users. We can authorize a user. So here's our user, right? Can authorize a user, right? And that user can access the same company servers, files, and apps and services from any approved device, any of these devices, right? Any of them, doesn't matter when, who, what, and where. That drawing there. Okay. So if I got my user here, I got my users, right? I can access this from here. I can access that from anywhere, right? And this can have files, this can have apps, can have services, any approved device through a secure desktop client or browser. Well, it's got to be a browser. It could be Horizon again. It could be your hypervisor, your hyper V. It could be an Azure machine that hosts. And again, when we talk about examples, we talk about DAS, and you're going to hear that a lot too when we talk about VDIs, right? And even personalized uh, cloud PCs. Again, there's multiple ways to deliver virtual desktops and apps to users, and that virtual desktop infrastructure is one of them, right? So understand that. That's really, really important, right? Um, so again, again, when we also talk about uh, again DAS, when we just talked about DAS, I don't want to confuse you with that, but again, DAS is really important, right? Um, when we talk about DAS, we talk about benefits, right, and use cases of DAS. So obviously, we know that DAS is known as desktop as a service. What is it? Oh, we got what is it? What's its features? So you got your cloud-based feature, right, where you're hosting virtual desktops in the cloud, and that means that they're stored and run on servers managed by a DAS provider. We have cloud-based accessibility. So this is where the user can access their desktop environment from anywhere with an internet connection, right? So an internet connection, as long as there's that internet connection somewhere, we can access that, right? So that user should be able to access the internet from anywhere, right? With a VPN or whatever the case may be. Like we talked about in our last class, we talked about the VPNs, right? And how that intertwines, um, you know, with the difference between our SaaS services and our Azure IaaS, right? So you need to connect to a VPN to access Azure IaaS resources, where you to access our SaaS services, you don't need a VPN. You just need a secure connection over the internet, right? So that's important. That's really, really important, right? Accessibility. When we talk about various devices within the internet, anywhere within that internet connection, we talk about laptops, thin clients, tablets, desktops, etc. Right? We also talk about what a managed service is for DAS and how DAS provider takes care of the backend infrastructure, and that includes the hardware, right? Includes the hardware. It includes the software, play right, security updates, and data storage, right? So who's that provider and manager, right? Who's going to manage that service? Who's going to be that provider? Who's going to maintain that managed service? Who's going to support it? Who's going to give those regular updates, those maintenance updates, those maintenances, those technical supports that are handled by the provider? And that just reduces burden on all internal IT staff, right? So understanding how that works and what that is, right? Because we need to be aware of that. Um, we also talk about scalability, another big word here. Is it scalable? Like how flexible it is. Can we use pay as you go? Sort of like Azure, right? Is there a free service for that, right? So with DAS, we can easily scale up or down based on the required organization needs, right? So is desktop as a service what you're really looking for, right? It allows us for adding or removing virtual desktops quickly without the need of significant capital investment. This is just investment. It is a flexible resource. Remember that, right? Pay as you go. So with DAS, you offer a subscription base. Again, these are SaaS based, right? Subscription, a SaaS subscription, right? Where so organizations can pay what they use. There are offers like that already, but again, we're going to create them in our own environment. We're going to save money. We're going to create it in our own fictitious environment, and that'll make cost-effective decisions for us, right? So when we talk about DAS, again, services, managed services, yeah, we talk about security and user experience as well, right? So knowing the data protection, where that data is stored, how often, um, like, do we have any security measures in place for that data? Is it protected? Is it compliant? We talked about compliance yesterday too. You know, they're compliant with specific industry standards and regulations. So, you know, to ensure that data security and privacy, right? User experience, we talk about consistency and performance, right? How consistent is that user experience, regardless of the device they use to access it? Performance, modern DAS solutions, again, these are specific things that, you know, leverage high performance computing resources to prove a smooth and responsive user experience. So we need that in place as well too when we talk about what DAS is, right? So again, moving along, will really hear these words a lot when we talk about persistence and non-persistence in the non-persistent VDI world, right? So, you know, in short, I'm just explaining what a DAS is. Again, this is just a feature that I've seen, and you know, people do use it. Again, you know, talk about examples or even personal or cloud PCs, right? So there's companies out there that provide that DAS service. Um, Again, in short, you know, persistent VDIs, and in our example application, Microsoft Teams stays installed for the user across sessions. So I want you guys to make note of that because that is important. Um, while non-persistent VDIs on Microsoft Teams example needs to be reinstalled each time the user logs in, right? So our virtual desktop that keeps everything for user like a personal computer, right? And then our non-persistent is our virtual desktop that resets after each use, starting fresh every time. So remember that, very, very important. Um, I won't talk about the benefits and use cases of DAS, but again, that's just an example we can see and talk about. This is all about VDIs, right? Um, there are use cases for DAS, again, like remote work, temporary workforce, and business continuity. And that's why they use that, right? So users can continue to work during disruptions such as, you know, natural disaster or office closure, since the desktops are accessible from anywhere, right? Uh, you know, it provides a temporary workforce, so it's a deal that for businesses that need to provide temporary seasonal workers, right? You see that a lot with students, seasonal workers, you know, students that are studying across board and, you know, they need that credit. Uh, Investing in without investing in that physical hardware, right? Giving those temporary contractors and students a physical hardware, a physical laptop, right? So you know, they can work from home, bring BYOD, and you can have the BYOD set up, right? So that's something that you can always do, right? Set that up. Remote work, again, you're going to use this for remote work, Das, right? You can facilitate remote working by providing your employees or those employees with access to work desktops from home or any remote location. Benefits, we talk about mobility, simplified management, quick development, and cost efficiency. I'm not going to go through all this, but again, know that it's good to learn, it's good to know, um, good to understand that. So what are persistent VDIs? And I want to split up the two so you guys kind of understand it further and detail. Um, we simplified it. It keeps everything for a user like a personal computer, but now what? Right? You may think of these as personal virtual desktops. Each user gets their own dedicated virtual desktop that stays the same each time they log in. So, for an example, in our case, if you install the Teams app or Teams application for a user on a persistent VDI, um, you'll hear that a lot. It'll stay there for that user the next time they log in. So installing that Microsoft Teams MSXI package should work smoothly because the virtual desktop remembers what was installed for that user. So a lot of the times you'll see that and you'll see how it's created. And I'll further that down into how it's used in different environments and some environments. And I think if we kind of we'll talk about the different methods and whatnot and how it's used, those cases that it's used in ESXi, and I'll show you those in my environments and then how we can use it in our vSphere environment, right? Our persistent independent disk modes, right? And our memories for that. So how that's used for that specific instance, right? Then we talk about our full clone, our link clone, or instant clone, right? Between our parent and our child. Um, VMs, right? And how that works and how it uses Delta disks and RAMs, right? So, full clone, fully clonable, right? Your parent to your child VM, it's a secondary child VM, right? From your parent machine with different SIDs, right? We talked about this as well too. Or you have your link clone, which uses Delta disks, right? And that'll, from your parent, it'll create the Delta disks and then it'll create the child VM with that. We also talked about that too. And then we have our instant clone, right? So these are some examples of different things. And we're going to see it when we get to the lab part of it. But I want to talk about what are persistent VDIs, right? And remember that in our Teams MSI X package, um, it should work smoothly because the virtual desktop remembers, right? Wordplay remembers what was installed for the user. So it's good to know. Um, we talk about again, we still talk about persistent, right? So our definition in a persistent VDI, right? Each user has dedicated virtual desktops that retains its state across a session, right? So you can have multiple sessions, right? It's like having a personal computer account. Right? We can use it persistent virtual persistent VDIs. Users can install apps, we can make change settings, we can keep their files, and everything will be there the next time they log in, right? So if we need to, in a non-persistent VDI, if we do need to do that, it's you'll see that in the next slide, but it's a little bit different, right? So if we install Microsoft Teams in a persistent VDI, it stays installed for that user, even after they log off and log back in, right? So our non-persistent VDIs, again, it's reset after each session, so it doesn't retain any changes. So sort of like a kiosk machine made by the user. So it starts with a fresh computer each time you log in. So that helps with, you know, unless you have scripts and you're creating scripts for these non-persistent VDIs, right? So you want to stick to it's your decision to make here, right? So I want you guys to follow through with what you've heard from me, and then I want you guys to make that decision when you're designing and architecting your VMs, right? And how you're using the different templates and clones, right? And what you're using those for, right? And POS systems, whatever you want, kiosks, POS systems, whatever you want to use, right? Um, you can go through there too. So again, we talk about install. I'll be right back. Okay, so welcome back. So useful for the environments where you want to maintain a clean, consistent state. Again, such as in a shared environment or in shared environments, right? Or a temporary task. So remember the differences between that and, again, our example, Microsoft Teams, in a non-persistent VDI, it will disappear when the user logs off, and you would need to reinstall it each time the user logs in. We'll show you, you'll kind of get the gist of it again when you're making that decision and you're creating those. So here comes our lab, or best part. Right? So we talk about step-by-step guides on how to create both types of VMs in VMware Workstation Pro. So we can creating persistent and non-persistent virtual machines in Workstation Pro allows uh, us to manage, not you, but you, let's say you, us, us to manage together, um, right? We've been doing this together, um, to manage together, and how those changes are handled within, and how those changes are handled within yours and our VMs, right? Right, just yours, but it should be yours, but our VMs, right? So together, a persistent VM will retain all the changes made during, like a physical computer. And I explained this 100 times. And explain this again. It discards changes upon shutdown or reset, and then reverting it to a clean state each time it starts, right? So remember that, remember that, remember that. Again, we explain the short messages here, and this is should be our main goal. So creating a persistent VM, we can launch the Workstation Pro and open the Workstation Pro on our workstation machine, and then we're going to start a new virtual machine wizard. We're going to click on the file in the new and collect a new machine, select new virtual machine, or create a new virtual machine icon. We're going to select a new virtual machine, right? We're going to select that, right? And then we're going to choose our configuration type as typical, recommended, first time, and then click next. And we're also select our installation media. This is where you're going to have your operating system or your task sequence or your WIM file, whatever media you have. You want to get that ready for you and use that as your physical disk, your ISO, or whatever operating system you want to install later. So this will allow you to set up the VM without immediately installing the VM. So we're going to use this or use this option here, because this will resolve the issue, and then we're going to click next. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that now. I'm gonna open, going to open our virtual machines here. Okay. This, what's this? Okay. To show you how to do that, so we're gonna file, right? We're gonna create a new virtual machine. We're creating a persistent and non-persistent machine here, and we're gonna click next on typical, right? And we're gonna choose that we'll install the operating system later, right? So that's our option there. Okay. And we're going to select our operating system as Windows, right? Or whatever you want, ESXi, whatever, if this is a server or a laptop, right? So this is going to be a Windows 10 machine. And then we're going to click next, right? And we're going to save it to our prototypes folder here, right? So we're going to go into our virtual machines, sorry, our servers here. We're going to create a prototypes, right? And we'll create this in here, okay? And we will, um, create the virtual machine within here, and we'll create this as a Windows 10 uh, persistent VDI, uh, persistent VDI. So that's where we're going to create that, and this is persistent, right? just to rename that, and I'm going to name my machine Windows 10 Win and VM Canada. This one's going to be today's date, which is the 30th of October, right? And 2024, and we'll say that it's persistent, right? Or we can just put PR here, PR, persists, right? And then Canadian, so we know that's our machine name. So I've gone ahead and done that. I'm going to click next. This is a VM. And this is going to be our kind of template. So this will be our template, our parent VM. And we'll click next. And again, if we go back to the instructions, we are going to talk about choosing the appropriate, we name it, we're going to choose the, allocate the disk space for the VM and choose whether or not to store the virtual disk as a single file or a multiple file. And we're going to click a single file, right? Because in a production environment, you know, you migrate these machines, it's better to have it in chunks so you can have them as multiple files. But again, in an environment that's testing, we can just you can use multiple files or single file. It doesn't matter, right? Whatever you're using it for, it's up to you and how you want to do it. So we can customize the hardware and install the operating system. And again, this is after that, the result, the VM is now set. You know, we can retain all the changes, configurations, and data across reboots and shutdowns, right? So that's how we create a persistent VDI, virtual machine, right? So this is pretty straightforward. There's nothing special about it. I'm going to use whatever I want, doesn't matter. And I'm going to click next, next and finish. So this machine is now created. This is our persistent machine and VDM, and this is what's going to have our application Microsoft Teams in it. I'm not going to install the machine. I just want to show you how to do it. I'm not going to turn it on. There's nothing special about turning it on. It's just it'll remain the same every time a user logs in your virtual environment. So especially, for example, you know, when we're talking about virtual environments, we talk about ESXi and vSphere, right? So if I were to, you know, log in to I can also create one here, and I'll show you how one gets created here if I create a virtual machine. So I think I have how much space I have here, but yeah, I'll have to shut this down. I only have 8 gigs, so I can't really create anything much here. But again, you can create a machine here, right? And we will create a virtual machine. If it was a template, we would deploy it. We would register or right click on that machine and register it as a template. But again, we'll just create the new template since we don't have one already created. And we will name it, you know, VM01 persistent test, right? Just, I don't care what it's called. And again, the operating system is Windows. And this one should be Windows 10 and 11. So let's say Windows 10. And we're going to enable Windows virtualization based security. So that'll make, because it requires secure boot, we need to enable that, right? And I'll put the persistent here. Let's make sure we spell that properly. Persistent test, okay. So we'll click next, right? And again, we talk about persistent memory and standard memory. We have one physical data store. So it doesn't matter where I store it, but I'm gonna store it in that data store that we talked about earlier, right? So did I talk about it earlier? Yeah, so we talk about our London shared disks across our hypervisors, right? So, and then we have our SCSI, our software SAM here that's installed. And again, this is a different course, but I just want to show you, you know, when we're connecting to our ESXi machines, our hypervisors, right? We can create those machines here. Doesn't matter. I'm not going to create it. Just going to show you the options that are there. So CPU is going to have one. I should be able to hot add it if it lets me, but in this case, I'm just going to use one for now. Just a blank machine. Reservation is fine, limits fine. Gonna enable CPU counters, no. Memory should be, again, it's a low machine. I'm not gonna install anything, so I'll just give it two gigs, right? Right, and then I can reserve whatever I want, limits, then my hard disk, I give it whatever I want, and this is gonna be stored on my data store. Remember that? In VMware, ESXi, and our vSphere environment, we talk about thick provision and thin provision when we create those machines. So, we tend to stay with eagerly zero and a thick provision in production environment. But because we're doing this as a test, we're just going to use thin provision for now, right? So what else? What else? What else? Talk about the network adapters, right? If we have our network adapters, we connect to those. Our CD, DVD should be connected. We can put our media within here if we want, from our data store, and connect them from our data store. Just make sure that it's there. And our video card, again, we should have support for that, right? Right, we should have 3D enabled, right? And a minimum of, let's say 1 gig or 2 gigs. Again, this is a small light machine, so it doesn't really matter. You want your minimum of 8 GB max, your 8 GB max basically. But in this case, it says our total video memory um, per display is 4 MB, right? And I usually give it about a gig, so 124. You can change that, it's up to you. You get tested in your environment, right? And then I'll click next. Um, So yeah, we talk about persistence. Yeah, there are persistence instructions, but I think vSphere also has them. I don't remember where. I think we saw them in ES6i. I think I should have a picture of that here. I can show you guys where that is. But if you look at the different disk modes in our Photon ES6i 6.5, you'll see that disk mode should have dependent, independent, persistent, and non-persistent. But again, that might be a little bit different. I wonder if I choose, um, let's see, let's go to this mode. There we go. So those are the modes here, persistent and non-persistent, right? And I think if we add yearly, it'll show us more. Okay, these are the three different now, if you need to reboot the machine or reboot the disk mode, right? You can use the persistent and non-persistent there. That's totally up to you. But again, there's our persistent modes that we talked about with disks, and we can also talk about persistence when we talk about memory. You know, and we can talk about that as well too. If we want this memory hot plug, then we need to enable that. So that's hot pluggable. And that's how you do that. Now look, next, and finished. So our network type is using EI00E. It should be using VMXNet3. um, I think by default it just uses it. Let's see if we can add our network adapter and change our network adapter. And close that off and leave that part. Next, and finished. And I'll be right back. So again, we created this persistent machine. It's a small machine. It's got no operating system. We're able to create this here. Again, these are the different, different features that we have here. that we're able to use, right, for our console. And, we can download our control here, right, and download that. This will take us directly to the website. Or we can store that in our data store, right? Um, you know, so we can power this on. It's got no images, right? So, I think in vSphere we can create clones and templates from our templates and stuff, and we can organize them that way. This is just a 2 gig. It doesn't matter what it's on. It'll turn on for me, but it'll give us like it'll go to the BIOS basically. We get started to the BIOS. That's just to firmware. Power to firmware. Does it let us power to firmware? Let's see. Am I able to power onto firmware? Will it let me power onto firmware? Power boot options. Yes. So choose which file. I can choose what boot. There you go. Force BIOS setup screen here. Save. And then go to that, and I can reset the machine. Doesn't matter. We'll restart the machine. And there we go. I'm in BIOS mode here. If I double click within it, scroll down, right? And then I can move from that or into the setup and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So this is where I can boot from a file. I can configure my boot options, right? I configure my screen size here as well, right? I can commit in this and then exit, and then I can again boot normally. But again, there's no operating system, so it's not going to boot. Okay. Very easy, very, very easy. So I'm going to power this off. Again, in here, I can monitor everything. But again, this is just an example of what my persistent VM would look like, right? It would have my MSXI app template application, and that'll automatically be available for everybody, right? That specific machine. Okay, so that was easy. Let's go back to the methods here of my non-persistent. And again, within my non-persistent, doesn't have a direct non-persistent mode like VMware's vSphere, right? I don't have vSphere to show you, but I will in a future video. You can achieve, right now I don't, I have to open it up. I have to look for it, but I might have it, I just gotta open it. You can achieve similar functionalities, use snapshots, cloning, and link clone, right? So if you want to know what that is, you can use this link, and I'll send this link out to you guys in the description. So, you can non-persistent VMs can be achieved by 3 methods, right? So you have your snapshots where we manually revert the VM to a safe state. I'm not gonna do one for you. I want you guys to do it on your end, and let me know how it works. We can also be achieved through link clones. So we can create a disposable VM that share resources like a parent VM, allowing for easy creation and deletion, right? We can also achieve it through cloning. So this is basically manually clone the base VM, right, or the parent VM for each session, and then delete the clones after you use it, right? So sort of like a Citrix like rental, like application virtualization. So you rent it and reuse it type of concept, maybe, right? But again, I have all the steps here on how to create one. I'll add this into my WhatsApp chat. If you need to know, if you guys want to create it, just message me on WhatsApp and I'll send you this methods. I want you guys to try it. I'm not gonna do it. It's the videos, they're taking a little bit too long. I want to divide this into 3, where uh, you know we're in the different methods, right, of cloning, and then we also clone the base VM for each session. So if you guys are interested in doing it, please send me a message on WhatsApp. Okay. In summary, persistent VMs again are straightforward to create when using standard VM creation process in Workstation Pro. So we do create persistent VMs. So they retain all the changes across sessions, which make them suitable for any ongoing project, guys, or environments where data persistence is essential. So this is very, 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 very important, right? So I want you guys to understand that. I'm gonna end it off from here. I want you guys to create it. I don't want to show you guys how to create. I want you guys to call me, let me know, and I'll send you the information on how to do it. Try it on your end. Let me know how it goes. Okay. I showed you guys how to do the persistent. I want you guys to do the linked clone or snapshots. Again, the instructions are here. If you guys need to know how to do it, just ask. Send me a message on WhatsApp and ask for this, the three methods for the non-persistent and the video you watched, and I'll send it to you. Okay. I want to thank you guys again for joining me. For October Cybersecurity Month, where it's everybody's responsibility, not just IT's. Um, you know, we need to work together. We need, we do the background stuff. You guys need to do the foreground stuff. Train your students if you guys haven't. These are good questions to ask also in interviews, right? So for you guys that want to ask questions, or managers that want to ask questions, these are some good questions to ask your peers. Again, thank you very much, guys. Without you, you know, I don't create these videos, right? So I want you guys to, like and subscribe and ask questions and bring these questions to my attention, right? So giving you those examples. So in my next part, I'm going to be talking about multi-session versus single session. So stay tuned for that. And then I'll also talk about privileged access workstation in my third part. So again, thank you very much. And have yourself a great day, and I'll talk to you guys soon, okay? Hang tight. I'll be uploading this video shortly.